Diesel shortage 2022. What the heck is happening? Welcome to the Real Report. Thanks for tuning in. And a huge shout out, as you can see the donation bar in the bottom right corner of your screen right here. Thanks to Rob is at 30%. I sincerely appreciate the support, Rob. You are awesome, good sir. If anyone else would like to buy me a coffee, the link is in the description. Now, getting into the information, East Coast retail diesel prices moving significantly higher than overall U.S. hikes. Extremely tight inventories are seen as the driving factor, blowing out spreads with benchmark Gulf Coast markets. East Coast retail diesel prices are soaring, and inventories in the region that are almost half of what they normally should be this time of year. In Pennsylvania, a town called Allentown is at $6.02 a gallon, and Houston is at $4.70 a gallon. The spread of $1.32 a gallon. Pretty steep, and it's only going to get worse from here as inventories declined 7% in just 1 week. But more striking was the fact that those inventories are a whopping 56.5% of the 5-year average for the corresponding October week. That's right, they're down 44%, excluding the pandemic influenced data, of course. National inventories for all distillates are running about 80 to 81% of the 5-year average, so they're down 20%. Go ahead and smack the like button. Make sure to comment anything interesting down below. It's really going to help me out. And subscribe with the notification bell if you haven't already. Freight set to remain high throughout the winter. Freight costs are likely to remain elevated through the winter, and the severity of the winter weather this year will determine the trajectory of fuel prices. Diesel fuel in the U.S. is up 9.2% and 44% higher than last year. Again, 44% higher than last year. Normally, the price of diesel will track with crude oil. In case you don't know, the prices since it is the biggest contributor to its production cost. Last year, crude oil accounted for about 49% of the overall cost of diesel fuel. Distribution and marketing is about 20%. Federal and state taxes are about 17%, and refining costs are about 13.5%. So that's the breakdown. Half of the cost of diesel fuel, though, again, comes from tracking crude oil prices. And bye-bye trucks, California air regulators to consider phasing out diesel big rigs. In another genius move, California truck drivers and the environmental groups presented their concerns. State air regulators plan to phase out the sale of medium and heavy-duty gas-powered vehicles within the next 20 years. If adopted, all new medium and heavy-duty vehicles sold in the Golden State will be required to be zero emission by 2040. Under the proposal, half of the vehicles added to the state and local government fleets must be zero emission starting in 2024 and 100% zero emission by 2027. Transportation accounts for 41% of the state's emissions inventory, and medium and heavy-duty trucks contribute a quarter of the sector's emissions. Earlier this year, California air regulators approved new regulations requiring all cars sold in the state to be zero emission by 2035, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to explain why it's ridiculous down below. The American Lung Association, here's a funny one. You want to talk about organizations being political. American Lung Association urged board members to require the sale of 100% zero-emission medium and heavy-duty trucks by 2036 instead of 2040, so they want it ahead of schedule. Now, in theory, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't want to breathe that either. However, at what point does the theoretical interrupt reality and make people's lives worse? You know what I mean? American Trucking Associations here said at the forefront of evaluating how to successfully deploy the zero-emission technologies, but unanimous in their belief that zero-emission trucks are not capable of doing what the regulation requires. The infrastructure cannot be established in the time frame given. And I've talked about this before. Most neighborhoods, if every single neighbor turned on a welder, for example, it would blow out the transformers. It's simply unrealistic currently. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a phenomenal idea in the future, just logistically, with the infrastructure right now, it is literally impossible. The charging infrastructure necessary to implement the proposal will require 65 to 160 megawatts, enough capacity to power a small city just for these trucks. Board members, the trucking industry is not opposed to zero emission technology. They want to get there, but there's a lot of work to do. Fuel company issues diesel shortage warning, says conditions are rapidly devolving. Here from Fox, Mansfield Energy issued the alert Friday stating there was a developing diesel fuel shortage in the southeastern region of the United States, poor pipeline shipping economics, and historically low supply of diesel reserves. The takeaway here states that are expected to experience serious effects of the shortage include Maryland, Virginia, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Reserves have been depleted and could run out in less than a month if not replenished, sparking fears of shortages and rising prices. And we're going to get into the side effects. Wyoming faces potential disaster, so it's not just the East either, as diesel supplies evaporate. Here from Kevin Killow at the Energy Reporter. Supply of diesel in the United States has dropped to its lowest seasonal level since 1945, just post World War II. Lack of refining capacity, and also possible that Wyoming will see rolling outages of fuel. And you got to remember, those have very drastic consequences. If supplies get low enough to limit shipping and industry, grocery store shelves go empty, farm equipment doesn't run, and people lose jobs. There are 4 refineries operating in Wyoming. Prior to 2020, the state had 5, so they're already down 20%. 2 of those were converted in the past few years to renewable diesel products, which are shipped to California. I just think it's funny that they do as I say, not as I do. He said distributors are concerned what happens if rail traffic and airline traffic increase in the coming months, or if there's a rail strike, which I'll talk about at the end of the video. Wyoming refineries are operating at 95% capacity. Wyoming would not be able to refine an increased crude oil supply. They are already operating at full capacity. We believe that gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel are the bedrocks of modern society and are going to be around for the foreseeable future, Gemente said. European policies limit refining, and now refineries on the U.S. Gulf Coast are exporting about 1 million barrels per day of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel to European countries. Same thing as California, but worse. We're really good at exporting things, and with that, we export our jobs. Wyoming is becoming the industrial zone of these more liberal states that don't want the industry in their backyard, but they want all the benefits from the industry. The only way that you're ever going to see relief at the pump is having more supply. And seriously, low diesel supplies threaten to worsen inflation, as of course, if it costs more, shipping costs more, your groceries cost more, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. A seriously low U.S. and global diesel supply is likely to drive up fuel costs and worsen inflation, raising concerns as the cold weather months approach. If we get a bout of cold weather, things could be challenging. And not could, they will be challenging. However, I did find an interesting statistic out of this article from The Hill. The country has about 25 days worth of diesel fuel left, and I want to make that very clear because all the fear-mongering clickbait headlines say 25 days left. Well, normally the country's supply is close to about low to mid-30s in terms of the numbers of days remaining. So is it worse? Yes. Is it catastrophic? No. It's within margin of 25 days versus 30. So, gasoline and diesel are products made from oil, and oil prices soared after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I highlighted that just as a funny talking point that they continue to blame it on Russia invading Ukraine. When under Trump, for example, we were energy independent. I can absolutely 100% with demonstrable objective facts prove that this has absolutely nothing to do with Russia, Ukraine, the current cost of energy in the United States. The refinery fire in northwest Indiana, and now the shutdown of BP's Toledo refinery. Those are refineries that produce a lot of diesel fuel. They process a lot of heavy Canadian oil. Analysts say that this crunch is expected to worsen persistently, and a high inflation is going to be a consequence. High diesel prices may drive up shipping and heating costs as well, and could also help push the country into a recession. U.S. natural gas spikes as temperatures are about to dive nationwide. Nat gas for December delivery soared as much as 13%. And 2-week outlook for the U.S. lower 48, average temperatures will begin to sink Sunday and fall well below a 30-year mean through the second half of the month. By November 15th, average temperatures across the U.S. could average in the mid-30s, obviously increasing demand. And here's the chart if you're looking on your screen. The U.S. lower 48 heating degree days will rise well above the 30-year trend line in indicating heating demand on the rise, aka it will soar. Look at this, the 30-year trend line, and we're about to shoot all the way up here. The gas rally underscores how sensitive traders are to potential cold blasts, as below normal stockpiles and booming exports stoke concern about whether supplies will be enough to meet demand. It's looking iffy. Biden accuses oil companies of war profiteering amidst all of this, threatens windfall tax ahead of the midterms. Oil companies said we're war profiteering as gasoline prices continue to drag on Democrats going into next week's midterm elections. Oil companies' record profits today are not because of doing something new or innovative, he says. Their profits are a windfall of war, a windfall from the brutal conflict that's ravaging Ukraine and hurting tens of millions of people around the globe, Biden charged. You know, at a time of war, any company receiving historic windfall profits like this has a responsibility to act beyond their narrow self-interest of its executives and shareholders. Kind of seems like Atlas Shrugged. If I was the owner of these oil companies, I would say, who is John Galt? And up and leave. They have a responsibility to act in the interest of their consumers, their community, and their country, to invest in America by increasing production and refining capacity, because they don't want to do that. They have the opportunity to do that, and they're going to pay a higher tax on their excess profits and face other restrictions, he mumbled through his pudding. And pressuring Saudi Arabia to delay a production cut, releasing oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, attempting to impose a moratorium on new oil and gas leases on federal land, canceling the Keystone XL pipeline project from Canada into the U.S., and banning oil drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge are just some of the things Biden has done to cause the current energy crisis we're in. And gas prices are higher, groceries are more expensive, and real wages are down. Main wages being down, another big takeaway to make the scenario even more crippling. 16% of voters said the economy was either excellent or good. They are morons. 59% they expect a recession. 40% of voters approve of Biden's handling of the economy. I doubt they can count past 10. And in addition to high inflation, the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes this year are increasing the cost of consumer borrowing, including for mortgages. If you guys saw, the Feds raised rates again today. And when the consumer core inflation is 6.6% and they haven't even raised rates to 4%, it's common knowledge that you have to increase above the rate of inflation to tamp it down, which they haven't done. And if they're already pivoting, well, looks like stagflation at best, and pretty much slow hyperinflation is a guarantee now. Double whammy ahead. Lawmaker warns of impact from diesel shortage, rail strike after the election. The economy could take a dual hit after the election if diesel shortages persist and rail unions strike as promised. If you guys remember the video I did in September, rail workers threatened to strike after the election if they could not agree to a new contract with railroad companies. Well, now that we're right here at election time, it's time to think about that again. The impact of the railroad strike could be exacerbated by ongoing shortages of diesel fuel, which power everything from tractor trailers to harvesting tractors. And with record low rivers water level, shipping those same harvested goods from those tractors that use diesel is also down. Steele urged Washington to go back to pro-energy policies that had made American energy independent under Donald Trump. So, love him or hate him, you can't deny that. We, energy speaking, are in a worse boat. So if you guys learn anything new, make sure to hit the like button, comment down below, even if it's just a thumbs up, because it's going to help me out a ton, and subscribe. Also, if you like the information, you want more, consider buying a coffee with the link below.